and I remember running out and running up to Russell Street, and it was total carnage. I could not believe what I was seeing. But
My colleagues thought that if you couldn't handle all that, then you were weak and not worthy of wearing the police uniform.
so he effectively tortured this lady, to death before he killed her. God, I wish you had a firearm because I'd like to finish you off.
Welcome to another episode of I Catch Killers. Policing can offer diversity and adventure that few other occupations can. Today's guest, Cameron Hardiman, has dangled from helicopters in the middle of the ocean, been caught up in a riot on an overseas peacekeeping mission, and undertaken humanitarian work following the Christchurch earthquake. All of this over a 35-year career across the Victorian Police and Australian Federal Police. These dangerous jobs came at a cost, and Cameron talks about one job that changed everything. Cameron Hardiman, welcome to I Catch Killers.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Well, I was a cop for a long time, and I looked at you air wing dudes and didn't realise or fully appreciate the type of work that you did. And reading your book, 10 Foot Tall, getting a sense of the type of jobs that you were doing as an observer on the air wing in Victorian Police. I didn't realise you I thought you just helped us chase crooks, and didn't realise that you attended to a lot of accidents and doing the ambulance work as well.
Yeah, I think that ambulance role was particular to Victoria. I mean, when I first went to the air wing, I had no idea that the air observers and the police helicopter went and did air ambulance work either.
Yeah.
And what it was back in the 85, I think, or 86, it was a handshake between the chief commissioner and the ambulance, or the head of the ambulance service, to create a 24-hour police machine and a 24-hour air ambulance. So the commissioner, I think it was Mick Miller, went and bought 2 more helicopters, and there was this handshake agreement between the two services that lasted from 1985 to 2017.
Right. Okay, well that explains it, because I was thinking from the New South Wales point of view, I didn't see that, but that makes a lot of sense. But that adds another dynamic to a job, doesn't it? Like you're doing the police, the type of stuff that you do some rescues and different things that the police air wing would do, but it must have been pretty heavy doing the ambulance work as well.
Look, it was, but I quite enjoyed it because it was a break from standard police work. I did 8 years general duties uniform policing before I went to the air wing.
Yeah.
And, we say that air wing or police work's quite exciting because when you get to work, you don't know what you're going to get. But when I got to work, I would have a look on the roster and see whether I was flying in the air ambulance helicopter or the police helicopter. So not only I didn't know what I was going to get during the shift, I also had to prepare for something totally different. Like air ambulance work, I found incredibly interesting and rewarding for the most part. It required a whole lot of different skills that we had to learn. I enjoyed it for the time that I was allowed to do it.
Well, you talked about not knowing what you're going to do, and that's part of the excitement with policing, and you've got it on steroids when you're doing the ambulance work as well. But that isn't, I think, anyway, an attraction to policing, the type of variety of work that you can do. And you're living testament to, in your career, you've done so many diverse things throughout your career.
Thanks. Yeah, I didn't have the normal police career that most police do. They go through you probably went through the process where they want you in uniform policing and general duties for 5 to 10 years, and then they expect you to become a detective as a senior detective, and then eventually a uniform sergeant, and then progress through the ranks. But I had a totally different trajectory. I nearly went down that role, but I came very close. But it's just that this job came up and I put in for it and got it. And that was it. That was the end of me. There was no more becoming a detective at that stage. It was, flying in helicopters 24/7.
Well, I was speaking to Charlie Bazina from ex-homicide detective just the other day, and I mentioned I've got you on the podcast, and I said, did you get to work with many people from the air wing? And he said, no, those dudes were too cool for us.
Oh, probably the same thing about Charlie. Homicide squad detectives weren't who we usually caught up with at work. We liked our patients to be alive.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna unpack your career, and there's a lot of just amazing things that you've done throughout your career, both and you worked for 35 years policing, but probably split up 50-50 Victorian Police and AFP Police.
Yeah, it was about 20 years and just over 15 for the AFP.
Right. Yeah. Tell us about your childhood. Where'd you grow up?
I was a rough brat, so I had a father that was in the Air Force, and so we toured a bit. So I spent a lot of time in Adelaide at the Air Force base there. But I was born in Melbourne, and I lived here for a few years. Then we went to Malaya, where he was stationed for 3 years. Then we came back to Melbourne. Then we went to Adelaide. Then we came back to Melbourne. So it was a pretty transient lifestyle.
I speak to a lot of, they call them the army brats, or the kids that have grown up with their parents in the armed forces. It must be a bit rough changing schools and locations, or a different experience from the average child's growing up.
Yeah, I think by the time I hit year 9, I was on my 3rd high school. It's not what I'd expect for or want for every kid, and I certainly don't want it for my children. I made sure that when they started school, they're going to stay there. Although I enjoyed moving around and living in different places, I really didn't enjoy going to different schools and having to make new friends.
Well,
it's quite hard on kids.
Oh, I could imagine it'd be very hard, but I suppose it builds your resilience and your communication skills and everything else moving around.
Yeah, it certainly does. I mean, it definitely does build resilience, so that's a good thing.
Yeah. Okay, policing. What steered you towards policing?
I didn't do too well in my last year of high school, so I spent about 12 months down the beach.
Surfing.
I did get into surfing. I loved it. And the other thing I enjoyed doing is going to see bands at pubs when bands used to play at pubs. So I had like a 12-month gap year before gap years were trendy.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I desperately needed a job, and I saw a nice ad on the TV that had police helicopters and dog squad units and boats and all this exciting stuff. So I thought I'd give it a crack, and within about 6 months I was in.
Right. Tell us about that. How old were you when you joined?
I was 18 when I went in.
You're a baby, aren't you? You think you know
about
the world.
You think you're king of the world, but you got absolutely no idea. I mean, I didn't even know how to shave properly. In fact, I'm pretty sure I didn't shave until I got to the police academy.
Right.
The only good thing is I was used to study. Not that I did well, but I was used to study. So I consider some of these 35-year-olds that suddenly had a career change and joined the police force with me, they had a terrible problem.
Yeah, I saw a few of them when I joined, and I think we joined around the same time. Yeah. And when they were opening up the academy for older applicants and students, and some people that had been out of school for 15, 20 years and then expecting to study, because it's certainly achievable and passable, but there is a lot that you've got to learn when you go into the academy. I
used to look at these 35-year-olds, hitting the books for the first time in 20 years. Yeah. Not only that, there was heavily into physical fitness, so we used to run the track constantly all day.
Yeah.
To see some of these older people struggling, and I just didn't have a problem with that.
Did it feel like the right fit for you in the academy? Did you? I know when I went through the academy, I felt, this feels right.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe I was getting paid for doing this, running around, shooting guns and having a bit of fun.
Yeah, I knew straight away. This is a job for me. And the second I hit the street, which was 4.5 months later Avondale Heights police station.
Yeah.
I definitely knew. It was just, I was having a ball. I was like a kid in a lolly shop.
Right. Tell us about that early times when you just started. You've been in the academy for 4.5 months. You went to, was it Avondale, the police
Avondale
station?
Heights, yeah.
Yep.
It's a western suburbs station in Melbourne.
Yeah.
I never heard much about it. I used to call it, after a while, I used to call it Sleepy Hollow. It wasn't terribly busy.
Yeah.
Avondale Heights is a weird suburb. There's only one or two ways into the suburb because the rest of it's surrounded by a river and freeways.
Right.
But to the north, you had Broadmeadows, which was flat out. South of that was Sunshine, which is even more busier. And
Yep.
the west was St Albans, which was probably one of the busiest stations in the western suburbs.
Yeah, I wonder what's best for young police. Like everyone wants to go. You want to go to a busy station. You want to be involved in all the action as much as you can get. But I see sometimes with the busy stations, you rush through it, and with the stations that are slightly less busy or quieter, that you've got a chance to learn and pick up the trade, because it is like a trade, the skills that you need as a police officer.
Yeah, you're right. I wanted excitement.
Yeah.
I drove to work the first 12 months with P plates on my car, and I got to drive a police car without them and go fast and pull people over and tell people, domestics, how to handle their relationship properly, even though I hadn't had one longer than a week. And so I wanted excitement.
Yeah.
But you're right. Easing into it allowed more time to learn properly. And I had some really good, very good mentors at that station.
Can make a difference. Well, you wanted your experience, and I looked and going through some of the things that you experienced, and it's not unusual for most police at the start of the career. But tell us about catching your first burglar. Like your first arrest is always exciting.
My first arrest was actually a burglar.
Yep.
It was on night shift, and we were driving. The old crusty old senior constable back there, probably did 40 years. It was my mentor.
Yeah.
He used to say, this is how you drive a police car in the middle of the night. So he dropped down about 5 or 6 kilometres an hour, wound the windows down, and just listened and looked.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is absolutely boring. And next thing you know, he's hit the brakes, and there's 2 guys running down a driveway, jumping a back fence.
Yeah.
And that was my first catch. I mean, one got away, but we certainly got the other one. And that was exhilarating. I thought I was in cloud 9. It wasn't much older than 19 years old.
I know what you're talking about, that first chase when the foot chase when the bad guy's running away and you're the good guy and you're chasing after him. It's fantastic, isn't it?
Not only that, I mean, the first car chase I went in was being in an XD Ford Falcon manual.
Yeah.
Chasing a Jaguar. Down the main street, Avondale Heights at breakneck speeds. That was a time when they expected you to continue chasing people. They never called one off. The only time a chase was called off is when you caught them or they crashed. That's, it's that long ago. But, that was just adrenaline pumping, and you don't come down off those highs for days.
No, well, that was the way of the world back then, wasn't it? The chase.
It was.
And I acknowledge and accept they had to change and put restrictions on it. It's a complicated area, but I remember a car chase and some escapees coming down the highway, and it was crazy. It would do justice on a crazy TV scene of car chases, and ended up in ramming the car and
And you think I'm getting paid to do this? And paid well.
Yeah. Okay. Catching your first burglar. The other side of it, attending your first drug overdose. In the 80s, when you joined, heroin was around. There was a lot of that type of thing. I think on my first day, we went round to a place where someone had OD'd, and you've seen the dead body there and the tragedy that comes with that. Yeah,
there wasn't a lot of heroin at Avondale Heights, so not a lot of overdoses there. There certainly was when I transferred to St Albans.
Yeah.
Probably more suicides than what there was
Yep.
drug overdoses there, and fatal accidents because we covered part of the Calder Highway.
Yeah.
So they were the really high pressure, serious traumatic jobs.
Well, I've pulled out a couple of things because in your book I saw that in a space of 3 months you had attended 3 fatal car accidents. They're terrible, and if you are in an area in policing that's got a main highway through it, invariably you are going to some horrendous car crashes.
Yeah.
But in your book, there's a quote that you brought out in your book when you're talking about attending the fatal car accidents and autopsy viewings. My colleagues thought that if you couldn't handle all that, then you were weak and not worthy of wearing the police uniform. I understand where you're coming from, because that's sort of you couldn't. Well, this is what we're getting paid to do. This is what you've got to put up with. But it's pretty confronting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and then that was just the mentality back then. I think it's slowly changing, but there's some tough old coppers back then in the 80s.
Yeah.
And they expected you to do your job, and they expected you to turn up the next day. And there used to be this saying, you can't get upset about these things or get sad or let it bother you because you won't be able to go to work the next day.
Yeah.
Which I think is a load of crap, because I haven't met a copper at all ever that would go to something serious and think I can't turn up the next day, because they're just dying to get to the next job.
Yeah.
You tell a copper that a big job's coming up and they're lining up.
Yeah, you don't see many people that hide from the big jobs, and even when you're on the day off, you're worried that something's going to happen.
You don't want to miss out. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't want to take a day off because there might be a big fatal accident, or there might be a big car chase, and you want to be in on the action. There's nothing worse than sitting around the mess room at lunchtime during the week and someone's telling war stories and you happen to be in bed sleeping in.
Yeah. I understand it, but you do see some horrific things, and it's you don't realise how young you are at the time when you join, and how raw you are and inexperienced. I remember going to a fatal car accident where a person burnt to death, and we saw him burn to death. I was working or just driving someone in the rescue squad. That's why we had to go there. Finish that, the horror of what we've just seen, and then go back to the police station, and he was quite happy cooking up his steak for dinner that night.
Yeah, and I bet you the smell probably made most people...
I was thinking, I just don't feel like eating right now, and especially steak.
And burns. I did a few burns on the air ambulance at the Air Wing, and they're even more gory. It's that smell is just overpowering, and then the visual cues you get, it's a fair bit to handle.
Yeah, it doesn't leave you. It does it. Another thing, again, talking on accidents in those early times when you're working in uniform, you talked about one particular accident. I think Adrian, he was in the back of the ambulance and he had a compound fracture, a bone sticking through his leg, and you were talking to him and thinking how lucky he was because he survived. Survived that accident, and then you found out the next day that he died. Yeah,
he died. I couldn't believe it. I'd actually said to him, I'll speak to you tomorrow and I'll get a statement when you're better.
Yeah.
And I remember coming into work and them saying, that accident from last night's fatal, and I thought, I had no idea who they're talking about. And all he got was a blood clot that went from his leg into his brain and killed him.
Right. Pull out another quote in your book, because I think it just gives you a sense and really chimes into what was expected of police at the time. There is an expectation both within the police force and from the public that coppers were able to handle all the carnage associated with fatal accidents. And who doesn't want to live up to those expectations? So that's you talking. That's quoting. I know where you're coming from with it.
Yeah. I mean, you want to do you're in the job that you love and you think you're made for. You don't want to believe that it's difficult for you or you can't handle it. So you puff your chest out and you keep soldering on.
Yeah. And there gets to a point where you start to get accepted. When you come in there, people tend to just keep a distance, watch how you're going to go.
Oh,
And then when you got a few runs on the board, all of a sudden you become one of the crew, and people start, enjoy hanging out with you and working with you, or requesting that they work with you.
well, I'm pretty sure that half the police station didn't know my name for the first couple of months.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me. I remember when I first sat in the police car, the senior constable next to me introduced himself, and the first thing he said after that was, "That's the police radio. Don't touch it until I tell you to."
Yeah.
And I just sat there motionless. Mind you, the first time he told me to get on the police radio, I stuffed it up, and I never lived that down for months.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all part of the growing up process, and I don't think they had the human resource section in the police wasn't that big back in those times too.
Yeah,
So,
might have had one person there to do transfers, but
there was no workplace
local
culture.
human resources or HR was the sergeant in the station smoking his head off.
Yeah. Again, I'm only bringing it up because it is part and parcel of policing. I want people to get an understanding of what policing is about, because we look at the young cops that, up in Sydney at the moment, there's riots going on and there's a lot of criticism of the police being heavy-handed and all that, but you do see a lot and do a lot in your early years in policing. You talked about another accident, and that was quite chilling, where a female had severe head injuries, and you got there before the ambulance, waiting for the ambulance to arrive, and there's a T-shirt in the back of the car, because invariably people are trapped in the car, and you're putting that T-shirt up on her head, and the way you describe it, that the head felt soft and spongy, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was my first real hands-on. I think some of the accidents you get to go to, or those fatal accidents, it might be already a police car there, or the ambulance has already arrived. And this accident again was on the Calder Freeway, which was through the Avondale Heights area. It was actually a dark spot of the Calder Freeway too.
Yeah.
And I remember that lady, and she was amazing. She was more concerned about her children at home. But I remember, having to be in the position to support her head and try and stop the blood. And, that's, it doesn't matter how many first aid courses you do. The first time you do that, it's quite confronting.
Yeah, and talking to her too. And
yeah, I mean, she was quite lucid and, talking conversation as if, there was nothing wrong. But, like I said, she was more concerned about her kids being home than what she was about herself.
Then you, after that, and again, this is a path that so many police would have been on. After that, you're covered in blood. You go back to the station. You're not knocking off. You've got to go clean yourself up, clean the blood off you, and find a new uniform if you usually had a spare uniform there for those type of things. And then you found out that she'd passed away.
Yeah. And not only you get dressed in uniform, you finish your shift, and you might get an 8-hour break where you go home, have some sleep, and then start again in the morning.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm raising this because it really brought it back what policing is all about. And I know in some high-profile jobs like investigators or the tactical teams get the kudos in the media and different things, but the backbone of police anywhere is the general duties.
Yeah. I mean, they're the first to get everywhere. Even a homicide.
Yeah.
They're the first on the scene. Very rarely the detective or the local detective gets there first.
Yeah.
I had seen it happen, but very rarely.
You were also present, when I say present, nearby when the Russell Street bombing, when Angela Taylor, a young policewoman, she was killed, and Carl Donadio.
Carl Donadio got seriously injured.
What tell us about that experience?
I was at City Traffic at the time, because what we did when we trained, we would spend about 6 months at a training station in uniform. And then the next 6 months, we'd go into places like D24. We'd have to work the police radio for a month. We'd get a look in at the fingerprint section. We'd go and work like the traffic operations group or the highway patrol. And there was a stint where we would work city traffic, and we put on a nice white cap and these big white gloves and direct traffic for a month.
That's fun.
Yeah, it was great fun. I mean, it's probably
Scary.
one of the best jobs that they got rid of. I think they should still do it.
Yeah.
I don't think half the police out there actually know how to direct traffic anymore. And I remember there used to be a cinema down the road, and I was actually, believe it or not, I was in the toilet at the cinema when the bomb went off. It wasn't one. When the bomb went off, there was one. Sorry. And I immediately heard the chatter, and I remember running out and running up to Russell Street, which is about 2 blocks away. And I thought, as I got there, I thought there was other explosions going off, but it was actually the tyres that were burning and exploding.
Blowing out, yeah.
And I think that was about lunchtime or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was total carnage. I could not believe what I was seeing. And I remember I actually worked that day for about another 8 hours. I was involved in a line search, later in the evening, just before dark, and found a bit of engine casing that had flown over Rossiter Street into the next block. That's how big the explosion was. But from when I first arrived at the accident scene to finding that engine block must have been about 5 or 6 hours, and I cannot remember what I did in between that. I got absolutely no idea. That's how busy the day was.
It's just the chaos. You're caught up in the chaos. Is that what you're talking about there?
Well, I think so, and I think that's exactly right. I think there's so much information coming into your little brain that it can't store and hold everything. So I'm sure it just goes straight out the other side.
It was such a violent attack, and like it was attacking police. A car bomb out the front of headquarters, and
solely against the police. And I think, I don't know, I can't remember the timeline of when there was a consulate bombing in Melbourne. Around about that time, and I'm not sure whether anyone ever remembers any other bombing in Melbourne. So it's sort of like, we used to watch it on TV overseas about car bombings over in Northern Ireland and whatever. Never ever thought that we'd have a car bomb planted outside a police station in Melbourne.
Bringing that violence, and the fact that at that point in time, I would imagine you're starting to feel like, okay, it's police, and that almost gives you it's them against us feeling when police are being targeted. Yeah,
I mean, it's a really tentative time for the next couple of months. I remember that within 2 or 3 weeks, I actually transferred into my stint at D24 there, which is on the second floor above where the car bomb went.
Yeah.
I remember walking to work, and the scars in Russell Street were still there. And I remember looking at the window and at D24 and thinking they're all brand new windows because they've been blown out. So even once the road was clean and, people were starting to sort of move on, there was all these little reminders about what had happened. And I think you could probably still go to Rossiter Street now. It's now a hotel or some sort of accommodation.
Yeah.
And it just chips out of big bricks.
Yeah.
Near the front door.
No, it was a horrendous situation. D24, what's that when you talk D24?
D24 is our comms room, our comms office.
Right, okay. Yep. All right.
So the radio operators back then used to be all police. They were all sergeants. And they'd have an off-sider with them that relieved them on shift.
And that's rotating you through the different sections to get a sense of what goes on.
Yeah, a sense of what's out there and how things run.
Yeah. You went back to secondary training, and I think the way you described it in the book, I can relate to it, because you look at your classmates that you passed out in the academy and you're so raw and innocent and all that, and then you come back, I think we came back 12 months after, you might have come back 18 months after. Everyone's changed and they're wiser, they've got a different look in their eye, and the other recruits at the academy are looking at you like you're the most experienced person they've ever seen in policing.
Yeah. 12 months in the job and they think you're the experienced one.
Yeah.
And you look over and you think, oh boy, are you in for it? But I'm not sure if I didn't know what I signed up, so I'm pretty sure that you didn't either.
Have no idea what you're coming for.
Yeah.
When you after your secondary training, you came back out, and then you went into at some stage in your career a unit for prospective detectives. We called it all sorts of different things up in New South Wales, but we've got the same situation where you're like a proactive team. You're out and about. You're dressing in casual gear and getting around. Yeah.
Yeah, that was about 2 years in. I was lucky that I had a really good mentor, an crusty old detective, homicide squad detective, who got promoted to Avondale Heights as a sergeant. And for some reason, he wanted to be or get seriously involved in my development.
Yeah.
I remember when I finished that training session where you go a month at different places. You usually go to a new training station to get a different experience. And I was dying to go to a new training station because Avondale Heights I thought was very quiet.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, I ended up going back to Avondale Heights again. And I couldn't work out why. And even after my training and I got permanently stationed somewhere, all my squad mates were going to different stations, and I went back to Avondale Heights for the third time. Right. And it turns out it was this sergeant that had contacted the academy and said that he wanted me to keep returning to Avondale Heights because he hadn't finished developing me yet.
Right.
And I never knew that for years until he told me, it would be at least 10 years later. And he was, in the course of that development, he pushed the right buttons to actually transfer me to that plainclothes unit for a 12-month period, which was usually going to people that have been in 5 or 6 years. So I was lucky in that case to actually get that job, which was another eye-opener for me. And again, I think I was maybe 21, at 21, driving around in a plain police car in plain clothes, busting down doors and smashing in windows. And
pretty exciting times.
Excitement again.
You reference the team as like Starsky and Hutch. I think we in New South Wales called it 21 Jump Street. But,
I could have called it 21 Jump Street with the age I was.
Yeah. What type? Like you're doing a lot of warrants and that type of stuff. That always makes for exciting times.
Yeah. Warrants back then were a bit easier to get than what they are now. You type up a warrant in the old Royal typewriter, smash the keys so it can go through 3 layers of paper and 3 layers of carbon paper, and take the warrant to the crusty old JP who has a full-time job. So you go and see him at his house, give your evidence, and he signs the warrant away while he's on his 5th scotch.
Yeah.
It was a different time back then, and we would execute a warrant every couple of days or every couple of shifts.
Yeah.
It was flat out busy.
And that, I think at that particular point in time, I've never seen people in those squads that are not enjoying it. And I think you said you couldn't believe you were getting paid to do this.
Yep.
Car chases, warrants, arresting the bad guys.
Yep, and amazing. And I'll still look back at it with great fondness and think, boy, I wish I was that age again, doing that again.
Yeah.
Incredible fun. And the adrenaline was just amazing. And I think you sort of almost got addicted to it.
I think that's why you're always chasing the fix, like the bigger job.
Yep.
And so the bigger the job came in, the more excitement, and it just drove you, didn't it? You could be. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. You can get addicted to it.
Yeah, I'm certain that it's addictive.
Yeah. You had we've talked about traffic accidents, the good part. Domestic disputes are always a hard one, and you had one particular domestic dispute that you went to Michael Grech, I think his name
Grech,
is.
Yep.
Tell us about that, because that's sad for a lot of reasons. Yeah,
it's a bigger story than what appears in the book too. I mean, Michael Grech, you got called to the house because there was what people thought were gunshots, and at that time I was at St Albans police station in uniform, and that probably at that moment in time probably had more domestics per head than any other police station in the country. I think it was just ridiculous. It was a real melting pot, and so we rushed up there and parked beside the house and snuck up around the side and got in through the front door. And this guy Michael Grech was lounging on the couch smoking a cigarette, and he had this weird look on his face, and I'd actually said to him, who else is in the house? I had my firearm at the time.
Yeah.
I said, who else is in the house? Said his wife. said, where is he? I can't remember exactly what he said to me, but I went looking for him and I found him in the backyard. And what he'd done is had an argument with her. And he went and got his pump action shotgun, and he'd taken her out and forced her out into the backyard. And I'm not sure what he shot at first, but he definitely shot both her knees out, then her arms, and the last thing he did was shoot her in the head and kill her. So he effectively tortured this lady, to death before he killed her. And we, of course, arrested him, but something we didn't know at the time, that he had a 6-year-old daughter that was in the house that had seen all this and had run to the house next door, which was just added this other element to the whole day, really.
Yeah.
So we made sure that she was looked after, and remember the look on his face. And when I first entered this house and finally arrested him, I thought, God, I wish you had a firearm because I'd like to finish you off.
Yeah, I can imagine.
He was an ass. And, smiling at him like a Cheshire cat.
Yeah.
I remember about to walk him out the door, and the wife, before she died, had managed to get a phone call to her father saying, I'm worried, please come over. So I opened the door, and there he wanted to see his daughter.
Yeah.
So I had to actually tell him that his daughter was dead. And there's two side stories to that.
Yeah.
The poor copper that I was working with at the time, Tim Lushek, it was a few years later, he pulled over a car on a freeway on the Western Highway, and it stopped on a bridge. And Tim had gotten out to tell the person in the car to move off the bridge because it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
And another car come up behind, didn't see the flashing lights of the police car that hit it, and it actually collided with him and threw him, Tim, over the bridge onto the freeway, and he died. So this story never ends. And I remember that another thing about this job, you're probably going to ask this, but I remember a week later, this guy Michael Grech was out on bail reporting at the police station 3 times. Yeah,
I looked back and double checked that I've got the right name, because I'm thinking, how the hell has that person got bail?
Yep. I remember answering the watch house at St Albans, and there he is waiting to sign the bail book because he's reporting on Monday, Wednesday and Friday. I couldn't believe it.
And that's the creep that you'd arrested for murdering his wife and
torturing then murder.
Yeah.
And a wise old copper years later said, everyone can get bail.
Yeah.
And they can.
They can, but in a situation like that, I think he would have foregone his right for bail. He ended up getting convicted and serving, when I say a sentence, probably not long enough, but we don't dictate how long they get put away.
He got 12 years. I don't know how long he served.
Yeah.
Probably the best part of that story, because there is a silver lining, that he'd actually shared a jail cell with what we called this guy the society killer. He killed his parents.
Yeah.
In Malvern. They were quite well off, and he killed them. And I think he's doing about 20 or 30 years at the time. And he shared a jail cell with this bloke. And he got involved with a bunch of guys in jail at the time, including him, and also a guy that was a bit of a con man. When Michael Grech had finally finished his sentence, he got together with some of these guys that he'd served time with.
Mm.
And he became his own loan shark. He was lending them money. And he lent one of them, this con man, $60,000 and said, you've got to pay me in a couple of months, otherwise you need to sign the house over to me. Now, of course, the guy had gambled the money and couldn't pay him back. So the silver lining is this con man had decided to tell Michael Grech that he's got this great business deal where he's going to go and grow a massive drug crop and pay Michael Grech back for not only the drug crop but profit, but also what he owed, and asked him to come out and see the drug crop. So Michael Grech went out the drug crop, and the guy that borrowed the money and his two mates whacked him over the head with a hammer and dumped his body in Melton.
Well,
so Michael Grech finally got what he deserved.
Yeah, well, not a loss to society if he inflicts
No,
that
you
type of
vote for a
pain.
better country, I think.
Yeah. Um, Speaking to the father coming round, I could imagine what's going through the father's mind, getting the call to start with, coming round, seeing police at the scene, and then you have to tell him that it's his daughter and she's dead. How?
No copper likes to deliver a death message, but I think and I've done my fair share.
Yeah.
To a certain degree, that having it happen instantly without any prior thought makes it a hell of a lot easier
Don't
than
have
having to
time
drive half an hour thinking about what you're about to do. So you wasn't terribly glad considering.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, because that drive, and when you pull up out the front of the place and then you're walking up the driveway and you've got it written all over your face and you know you're about to shatter someone's life. That's
Yeah,
not good, is it?
and you run through your head how you're going to say it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how you plan it, because it's all going to be a result of what they say when you tell them.
Yeah.
And that varies from crying to violence.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've seen those the different way. You had a mentor called Bob. Was that the person you were talking about? That was
Bob Croxford.
Right. What he ended up self-harming.
Yeah, he committed suicide years after leaving the job.
Do we know what that was about?
No, I never really sort of wanted to find out. Bob was an interesting fellow. He's a homicide squad detective back in the 80s, before he got to have an eye to the sergeant. He'd been shot in the 70s. He got shot by a crook in the hip. So he had a very interesting past. And he retired after probably, I think, about 30 years service, and worked at the Australia Post.
Right.
And I used to see him quite regularly when I was in the helicopter. We used to take a helicopter up to a satellite town out of Melbourne once a year for a show, like a fair type thing. And he used to always come up and say hello, and we chatted. And then I just found out a couple of weeks later that he'd committed suicide.
Yeah, well, that's not good. But it sounds like he was a good role model and mentor for you.
Exceptionally good detective, apparently. I think they've actually named the Ducks the detective the Ducks of the detective training school course in Melbourne for all detectives. I think they've named the Ducks award.
Yeah.
After Bob Croxford, remember?
Well, that's a high accolade.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get any higher accolades than that, I think.
Yeah.
Detective world.
Okay, so we've got a sense of you're looking for more excitement at this stage. You're looking for something else. You're chasing something. How did you get interested in the air wing? How did that? I know you said your old man was in the RAF, so you're probably looking at planes flying around. But what was the attraction to the air wing?
Well, I first saw my first helicopter in the mid-70s when I was at Edinburgh, or living in a place called Smithfield Plains, or Elizabeth, which is another story altogether in South Australia. So I knew what the Iroquois or the Huey helicopter was, because back in the mid-70s, the helicopters in the military were flown by the Air Force. So I knew exactly what they were, and I thought they were quite exciting things. And I distinctly remember it flying over our house, and the doors were back, and there was a crewman in the back, and I'm pretty sure he was waving at me, or he's waving at someone, probably some female around the corner, but I was out the front yard thinking that bloke's just waved at me. So I always had that in the back of my memory. But I never ever thought about transferring to the police air wing. I didn't actually at the time know a lot about it.
Yeah.
When we worked in Avondale Heights, we were at this spot that was in line with the runway of Melbourne Airport. So we very rarely saw the police helicopter come over to help us on jobs.
Yep.
Because it was right under where all the
they couldn't fly. Yeah.
The big aircraft were landing. So I remember reading that there was vacancies at the police air wing, and thought, wow, do I become a detective and apply for detective training school like my mentor wanted me to do?
Yeah.
Or do I go and see if I can work in a helicopter for a few years? And I think the pull towards that helicopter was a little bit too great.
Right. That steered
So,
you.
I forego that sort of typical plan that they expect for most coppers to become detectives, and decided to fly around in helicopters.
Had you met anyone in the air wing up until that time?
No. Oh, well, believe it or not, they did suggest if you wanted to come out and you wanted to apply, you should come out and have a fly.
Yeah.
And back then you could anyone could request to go for a fly in the police helicopter if they're a police member. So I did that. I went for a 2-hour flight at night time and thought, yeah, this is a pretty good job.
Okay.
And that was it. So a 2-hour flight in a helicopter, met 2 people, a pilot and an air observer.
Yep.
And that was it. I went there and I did 14 years.
What was the process to get in? Because I would imagine it's a limited positions, obviously. And was it hard to get in?
Yeah, it was. I made a couple of attempts. Never was not found not suitable.
Yeah.
But back then, each vacancy, there's about 80 applicants. I'm not sure on the scheme of things whether that is a lot.
Yeah.
I would assume it is for the position. And had to do a physical that included swimming.
Mm.
You had to do the regular push-ups, sit-ups, chin-ups. They got you to carry stretchers. They got you to climb rope. They got you to hold your breath and swim underwater. They got you to swim laps and tread water.
Right.
And after that, if you got through that, they interviewed you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us what the role is. You've got how long had you been in the cops at this stage when you got the position?
It was about almost 8 years, I think.
Yeah.
In general duties uniform, which is probably quite average for someone going to the police air wing.
Okay.
About 8 years. There have been some that have got less, and there have been some that have got way more than 8 years. But I think at that time, about 8, 9, maybe 10 years was average. The role as an air observer, which they now call tactical flight operators, was to be in command of the police aircraft for police operations.
Right.
So they certainly wanted someone with a grounding in general duties.
Yeah.
And a lot of experience, because that's what your main bread and butter was to do, was to support general duties policing from the air.
So you got the pilot that's obviously in charge of the helicopter, but your role there is to be that conduit between the pilot and the helicopter and what's needed from a police point of view.
Yeah, probably about half the pilots at the police area in that time weren't trained coppers.
Yeah.
They were brought in as pilots and sworn into the police force, and their job was to fly an aircraft.
Yep.
And the job of the observer was to make sure the aircraft did police work properly in support of the ground troops.
Right.
And it was a good mix, because you don't want the person in control of the safety of an aircraft to be the same person that's in control of what it does operationally, because there is always going to be a conflict.
Makes sense.
You want to make sure that the helicopter's flown within its limits and legally and safely, whereas a copper is going to want to push limits to get the job done and arrest the crook. You don't want that to be the same person.
I could see how that could end in tears. If the
you can imagine if the copper was the one that wanted to catch the crook was the guy that was in charge of the safety of the aircraft. It had turned to shit very quickly.
Why did you land that helicopter on the car type situation?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Half the pilots there were actually trained coppers.
Yeah.
And actually were observers and got their pilot's license, and they relinquish a bit of power.
Right. Once they
swap seats.
Once they become the pilot.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of the type of jobs where I've had use of the helicopter in criminal investigations, and I remember going up. We're looking at after some notorious killers, and they had a place hidden out in the bush, and we had to go in there covertly, but we wanted to look at the place or locate the place and get the bearings. And I remember that was an interesting trip, and different things without giving away methodology, how they flew in so that we couldn't be seen, and different things. And and I don't think I'm getting anyone into trouble, but when we're coming back to Sydney, they said, do you want the direct route or the scenic route? We clearly said the scenic route, and yeah.
So let me guess, it was low level along the coast, or?
Yeah, down through mountain ranges,
Yeah, okay,
over the
same
river.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was,
I mean, it's not illegal,
yeah,
but it does make life a lot more enjoyable.
But I could imagine, like, that's your day-to-day job. I'm just trying to picture tell us what the roles or the type of jobs that you get. So you're in the air wing as an observer for what, 12 years, 10 years?
Yeah, 14 or 13 with Victoria Police, helicopters.
Yep.
Um,
your average working week, because I suppose narrowing it down to an average day, but give us a general sense of the type of jobs you might respond to or might do.
Look, I suppose car chases are a big part of police operations with helicopters. Any sort of crook that's decamped from a car or a house, or suspect hanging around a house, missing people, missing kids.
Yep.
Probably a big bread and butter. We used to do a lot of school alarms. You know, if a school alarm went off, we were in the air and could get there quickly.
Yep.
So that was pretty much your general duties, basic jobs.
Mm.
We also had to provide a search and rescue capability in the state of Victoria. So, you know, you always had to have equipment in the back that enabled you to, you know, pull someone out of the water off the yacht or boat, or someone that was injured in the hills or lost.
Mm.
So all those search and rescue tasks. And then, of course, a couple of shifts a week, you might be working the air ambulance and going to fatal accidents or industrial accidents, or people that have got injuries that need to get to hospital quickly.
Diverse sort of work, isn't it?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, police work's like that, but at the air wing, it's even wider, a wider scope of possibilities.
What give us a rundown of a car chase you would remember? Like, I think that'd be great. They're in a car, you're in a helicopter.
Well, there's two periods that you can talk about car chase and the technology and the advantages of it. When I first went to the police air wing in 92, we used to navigate the helicopter using a street directory.
Yeah.
You know, if we were going to the country and doing a search and rescue, believe it or not, we used to have a chart. We used to draw a line between where we were and where we want to go. Use a compass, get a heading and set the compass, and then time it. That's how archaic it was.
Right.
Our first GPS we got was just full of hospital data. So it used to be worked on the air ambulance wherever we are, we used to be able to
know where the nearest hospital. Yeah.
You know, that was the length of navigation was what we would call a Melway street directory. You had to look the street up in the back, go to the right map, and find it. So chasing a car, you can imagine chasing a car and you've got a map in front of you. And once the helicopter at that stage back then, and I think it's the same today, got overhead, then the helicopter called the chase.
Right. Okay.
Because we had the best view. And you can imagine the chaos in a helicopter sitting at 400 feet at night, the spotlight on, an observer looking out the window trying to find the street in the street directory. It was incredibly difficult. Absolute chaos in the helicopter,
and there's not much room.
Great fun.
Yeah, great fun, but there's not much room in the helicopters. It's noisy. You got your headphones on.
Yeah.
There would be a lot of chaos, and you're looking out.
You know, I remember one day I was chasing a car, and it started at Gladstone Park, which is up near the airport, so it ended up in the city. I went for about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And at that stage, I think we had one of those thermal cameras. We finally got one of them, so it must have been about 95 or 96. But we were still using the street directory. And I remember, because we had this camera on, we were recording the video, and the audio in the aircraft was also being recorded.
That can be embarrassing.
It was. I remember being very, very calm when this chase was going on, when I was on the radio to our communications, being very calm and sedate in my communications, being crystal clear, talking about, you know, he's just gone through that intersection, he's doing about 70 Ks, he's approaching this street. And then the radio chatter cuts, and I'm telling the pilot, yelling at him, telling him what to do, saying, "Did you fucking see that? He nearly hit that car." unfortunately, that tape got out, and they played it at the academy to the new recruits for years.
Yeah.
Saying exactly,
Well, good.
basically identifying how chaotic a chase can be.
Yeah.
And that what you don't know of back at, behind the scenes.
Well, that
followed me around for a long time.
I can imagine, but that is what goes on, isn't it? Like the radio, we all try to be professional on the radio, and then when you're not talking on the radio, fuck, did you see that?
Yeah. And I was notorious for it, and I thought you all were, but it's just
being caught.
One rule there is just don't record your cockpit conversations.
Yeah. Rappelling, when you're down getting bodies out, and in part 2 we're going to talk about a rescue you did in Bass Strait. But there are other ones in leading up to that. People trapped, washed off rocks, fishermen washed off rocks. One that sort of resonated with me that you spoke about in the book of bringing a body up, and you've got is it called the stoop, the rope that hangs around?
Oh, the strop. Yeah,
strop,
it's like a horse collar.
Yeah, and picking up a deceased body, and you're flying up with the body out of the water and different things.
Yeah. I think, it's hard to remember. I should look it up. I can't remember what my first winch rescue was. I got a feeling it was 2 bodies.
Yeah.
That of fishermen that were wearing waders in their boat in the ocean, and they fell in, the waders filled up, and they just drowned.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't a winch we had to do. And fortunately, the air ambulance had been called down there, and I was on the police helicopter. So there was 2 helicopters down there. And they'd found these guys. There was 3 in total that died. And one of the police launch had come down and recovered 1 out of the water, but they couldn't get the other 2 because they were stuck in and being washed up against rocks.
Yeah.
And usually what would happen is, you'd unfortunately have to leave them there until such time as they were washed on the rocks or washed out to where someone could access them. Or the only other way would be to use a fishing method, gaff them, which is just totally unacceptable. And they'd asked me if I'd be prepared to go into the water and winch out the 2 bodies, and they left it up to me. There's this unwritten rule in helicopter winch rescues that, all 3 of the crew have to do it. And if someone says they don't want to do it, then we never question the reason why.
Okay, that's a safety thing and a respect thing, I suppose.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and it's to make sure that everyone's comfortable. You don't want to put anyone, you don't want an uncomfortable pilot. You certainly don't want an uncomfortable winch operator. You can't do it with a crewman down the wire. That's not going to be
So breaking the roles up, the pilot's obvious their role, the winch operator, that's the one that's lowering the rope and lowering you down, and the other one's the one that's going in the water or wherever they're going.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's a certain stage in the winching process. You can imagine that if you're coming in to winch someone, whether it be bodies or someone's alive or onto a boat or raft, a lot of people don't realise, but there's a certain point where the pilot can't see what's below him.
Yeah.
So he's got to look straight out to the right, and he's guided in by a commentary by the winch operator who's in the back, who can see. So that winch operator will talk him in, I suppose, through specific words to get him over the top.
And the person on the end of the rope, you haven't got comms with...
No, once you leave the aircraft, back then there was no comms. I think some people use radios now.
Yeah. So
I'm not sure whether it's really worth it. Once you're on the ground, you need a radio, but you don't have any control. As a winch crewman on the wire, you don't have any control of what's going on.
Yeah.
Your job starts when you land.
Okay.
So, I got winched into the water where these 2 bodies were getting, grabbed them off the rocks as they were being bashed, and pulled them both out.
Yeah.
And that was my first experience with winching. And I remember the same day, later that afternoon, I got called to winch a guy and his dog off a cliff only about 2 hours later.
I like it when you guys bring the dogs up too. Because I don't know whether you're meant to or not, but it would be hard leaving the dog.
I did actually say to this guy, I got him, he was stuck on this cliff ledge and the ocean was below. And we did what was called a cliff walk. Instead of trying to winch and swing me in, they winched me to the top of the cliff, and then I sort of walked back down the cliff while they were winching out the cable and hovering above. And I remember landing on this ledge and putting the winch, the rescue strop over him, and then putting his arms. So I said, "You hold your arms there." And I grabbed the dog who was happy to see me, and I plonked him on top. And I said, "Now I want you to hold on to your dog, and if you let go of the dog, you're going in too." And he was quite happy to hold on to that dog, and the dog thoroughly enjoyed it. My passenger was scared shitless, but the dog loved every minute of it.
What are some of the reactions you get? Like people, and we're talking about saving lives here because you guys aren't called out if it's not for a legitimate reason. What are some of the reactions where someone's there thinking they're going to die, and then you come sliding down the rope and go, "Here I am." What's the communications like?
I think the reaction is usually relief. Some people are shit scared of heights and don't want to get on a winch cable. To a certain point, I don't blame them. The winch cable is about 5 mil thick. It doesn't look that strong. Helicopters make a huge downdraft and a huge noise, and I can imagine that most people don't want to actually travel up that wire.
Yeah.
But when it's their only option to get out, I think they're quite immune to it.
Yeah.
Very quickly. Most people do exactly what you tell them to do.
Yeah.
And I've never had anyone say, "No, I don't want to get on that winch."
There's an obvious risk associated, just being up in a helicopter for the amount of flying hours that you're doing, the risk associated with there. And then you're not flying, it's not a sightseeing tour, so you're not flying at the best time to fly. You'd be flying in storms and different things. And then add on that, you're jumping out of the helicopter attached to a cable. The risk factor, did you weigh that up? Did you, what was going through your mind, or were you addicted to the excitement of it?
Oh, look, I love the excitement.
Yeah.
In certain jobs, they're risky. I mean, generally winching is relatively safe.
Yeah.
Particularly for the helicopter pilot and the winch operator, they're well above any relative danger. The crewman on the wire, the guy that's hanging there, has got to probably faces greater risk than anyone else in the crew.
Yeah.
But you've got to be confident in your procedures and that you're reasonably well practiced at it. It doesn't matter how difficult a winch gets with the weather or the wind or ocean, the principles are the same. And you just got to stick to your training and do it. So of course, there have been a number of winches where I've been on the wire and thought, Jesus, I'm not sure I really want to do this, but I'll give it a crack.
You're in operation mode. It'd make for a tight crew, I would imagine. The people that you work with, there's a lot of trust you've got to all put in each other.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're sitting on a 5 millimeter thick wire 200 feet below a helicopter, you really have to trust the guys up the top.
Yeah.
And we do. The good thing is that the average winch crewman's also a winch operator, so next time he gets to put the other guy down
it can be paid
down the wire.
Yeah.
And we have a bit of fun about it. I mean, you never tell someone it's your birthday, otherwise they go and take your winch training and stick you into the mud and drag you through crap.
Yeah,
we have a bit of fun with it.
Well, for the tension that you guys would be going through, I would imagine there has to be those light moments, that humour where you have a bit of fun and stir each other up. Otherwise, you could be hanging on too tight, I would imagine. You've got to release the pressure at some stage.
Look, I won't tell you too much about that.
No, don't. It might be, yeah.
There is nothing worse than having a helicopter crew grounded in a hangar with nothing to do. Because the practical jokes you're playing on each other are bordering on criminal.
And probably are if we dissect
them. There's nothing worse than coming in and finding out that the weather's so bad you can't get off the ground.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Look, we might take a break here, Cameron. When we come back, there's so much more to talk about, and we haven't even started on your AFP career.
Yeah.
When we get back, I want to talk about a rescue that you're involved in Bass Strait, and I'll let you tell that story, but fairly intense, and it's left a lasting impact on you. We'll talk about your time in the AFP, and that includes Solomon Islands and over in Christchurch following the earthquakes. A few other criminal investigations, drug deals, and different things. And also, if you're happy to talk about that, all this work comes at a cost, and post-traumatic stress that you've identified late in your career, and we might talk a bit about that if you're comfortable with that.
No worries.
Okay, we'll take a break.
Thank
Cheers.
you.